Hello, Emmaus Road. As we enter into our 11th week of meeting exclusively online, I want to take a moment to talk to you about the approach that we've chosen to take in for our online broadcast up to this point, and also talk to you a little bit about the approach that we're going to take moving forward. And then at the end, I'll talk to you a little bit about our plans that we have for gathering in person again once we get to that point. When all of our lives were so quickly disrupted by COVID-19, sports seasons canceled, travel suspended, schools moved to online, I really felt as a pastor that in those first few weeks of disruption, what we needed most as a culture, as a society, as a community, what we needed most from the church was communication that was authentic, it was intimate, and as much connection as possible through a screen. And the best way that I knew to do that was to take the elements of worship that we're familiar with, like corporate prayers, confession, communion, and preaching, and to facilitate those right in front of my computer from my home. I wanted to eliminate as many barriers as possible to an online broadcast and do the services from home so that it was almost as a way of inviting all of you in to my basement, where I could speak openly, honestly, with as much connection as possible and with as many barriers removed. There's a lot of inherent barriers to an online broadcast. And the further out the shot is, or if there's a physical barrier in the screen or in the shot, that those things create a sense of distance. And rather than creating that distance, I wanted to do the opposite. I wanted to get right up front and be able to speak to you in that way and facilitate our worship services. And in my opinion, I hope in yours as well, that worked really well in the beginning. In those first few weeks, as we were all really disoriented because of the disruption to our lives. After a few weeks, though, it became clear to me that I wanted to begin doing the broadcast from the church, almost exclusively just as a way of reminding us that this is sacred space. That we as a church have sacred space that we can call our own. It's a place where all of us have encountered God. And so moving the broadcast to the church was really a way of saying, hey, do you remember this place? That just like God is with us, he never leaves us, this space that has been so important to many of us over the years is going to be here when this is all over. And it's here waiting for us for when we're ready to gather back again. And I'm also confident as well that this was the right move at the right time. However, in the last couple of weeks, I have felt that our broadcasts need to take on a new feel. In particular, I want to begin communicating through the broadcast that the church is not centered on a single personality or a single leader. That the church is made up of its people, and the strength of the church is in its people. And to put it quite frankly, we couldn't communicate this with just me in front of my laptop. And so beginning this Sunday, we're going to move to having our services pre-recorded and then published on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. This is a different approach. It's an approach that some churches have chosen to take. Other churches are doing live services that are recorded right then and there, as we've been doing. But what moving to pre-recorded services does for us is it opens up new possibilities that we didn't have the technological infrastructure to do previous to this, or if we were doing everything live and on the spot. And here are some of those things. First, we'll be able to include new voices and faces in the broadcast. Remember how I talked to you about I wanted the shot to be close and have this intimate and authentic feel? I still hold that commitment. And that's difficult to do without the awkwardness of me getting up from the stool and someone else kind of walking into the shot. We could have done it that way, but this felt like a more robust way to introduce new faces and voices into the broadcast. And with new voices and with new faces, we're also able to include new elements into our services, including a children's lesson. Yes, we know that getting your children to watch me on a computer for an hour is an impossibility. So we are now including, moving forward, beginning this Sunday, May 24th, going to include a children's lesson as part of the broadcast, along with a couple other fun elements that we hope will help keep your kids engaged in church. Our hope is that this time of social distancing is not a time where the spiritual development of our kids goes to the wayside, but rather that we can continue to pour in. Our kids can plug in to the ministry that we're doing as a church. And going to pre-recorded services is really going to help us do that because we can include some fun elements. So we're looking forward to that. Secondly, pre-recorded services will allow us to begin including music in our broadcast, something I'm sure that you've noticed that we've not done up to this point. And the simple reason is we just don't have the hardware and or software uh, for live music over an internet stream to sound good. And it was really important to me that if we do it at all, we want it to sound good. And so doing pre-recorded services allows us to implement some musical elements into our services. Now, we're still not going to be doing full worship sets, but we do anticipate utilizing musical elements. And we're really excited about that. As a musician, I'm excited about that. Thirdly is it helps us to avoid sudden issues that can come up during a live broadcast. Those of you that have been joining us regularly have no doubt noticed we've had audio issues occur way more than we want, despite all of our efforts in troubleshooting and testing before we go live with the broadcast. We've done all of our due diligence and then some to try to avoid those issues, and yet we're still having some of those issues. And so moving in this new direction is going to help us in a lot of positive ways. It's going to help us to avoid some negative things in our live broadcasts. And so we're excited about that. All of this begins Sunday, May 24th. And the cool thing is we're now able to go into new platforms as well. So you can watch us live 10 a.m. On Facebook. And again, we say live as in the pre-recorded service is going to be premiered at that time. So 10 a.m. is the first time you can watch it on Facebook, and also will be available on YouTube as well. So we're excited about that. Now, the other thing we know is that this season won't last forever. And so what are our plans for returning to in-person worship? And I want to begin by addressing a couple of the most common questions I've been getting. First is, when will we start meeting together again? The answer is, I don't know. It depends on when the governor allows for gatherings of large groups again. I anticipate that it will certainly be sometime this summer, but I just don't know for sure. And while some are really anxious to get back together, they're excited about doing that. Others are really anxious, as in worried about getting back together, and are more cautious in doing so. And I can tell you that as a group and as a church, we're going to be more cautious in terms of the timing of when we open up our sanctuary for worship. But in terms of specific timeframes, we just don't know yet. The second most common question I get is, will we begin streaming those in-person services online? And the answer is yes, we hope to. We're researching and carefully considering hardware and software that we would need to purchase that would enable us to stream our services from the sanctuary and to do it well. And so we're considering those costs. And I want to reiterate to you that my commitment is for us to do it well. I don't want to point an old iPhone, have it in the back of the sanctuary catching the room sound. That is a live broadcast, but for me, just in my opinion, does not meet the quality that we want to be able to put out to the world to worship. And so we want to be able to do it well, but there are some costs associated with that. We're carefully considering those costs. How can we do it well, but do it in a way that is affordable? And so, but what we are committed to, hopefully, is being able to offer those online broadcasts. Knowing that many of you will be cautious in how you return to in-person gatherings, we want to maintain our online presence so we can minister to everyone who wants to be part of the ministry of Emmaus Road. And then, of course, there's all the considerations of what services will look like, what practices will change when we do gather back in person. We're still brainstorming all those specifics, but I did want to tell you some of the things we're thinking about so that you can get a feel and a sense of the level of care and caution that we're considering for those in-person gatherings. First of all, we want to reduce the amount of commonly touched spaces and implement stricter cleaning procedures. We have not been using a cleaning service while we've not been in the building, but as soon as we gather back in the building and are ready to do that again, we have a signed contract with the cleaning service that is going to outline all the necessary sanitation practices to begin implementing leading up to, and then of course during our time of gathering weekly in our sanctuary. We also will be encouraging masks for all attendees. Greeters won't shake hands, but will offer a smile with their eyes. Bulletins will be made available digitally, as well as printed bulletins that'll be on chairs instead of passed out as you come in. Offering plates will be carried around by ushers, but not passed. And then we'll really encourage you to consider moving your giving to online, as many of you have done already. And then also we have offering boxes in the back that are available for those times as well. We're going to introduce household seating. What this will look like is you'll sit with members of your household in clusters around the sanctuary. So rather than individual seats that are 6 feet apart, we'll have household clusters that are then 6 feet apart. So we'll kind of go to a more clustered seating arrangement in our sanctuary. For communion, which is, I know, a concern for a lot of people, but such a central part of our worshiping together, we hope to have self-contained communion where the elements are pre-packaged and then you open them up at the time of communion so that they're only touched by you. The thing about these is they're in very high demand right now, as you might guess, and they're pretty hard to come by. We have some on order. This is now the second time that we've tried to order them. We hope that this order will go through and we'll be able to get some in hand for that purpose. There are some limitations there, though. It doesn't accommodate our gluten-free members, and so we're trying to explore options there. Food and drink will not be served from our welcome center. The bread table that we love will not be available, at least for the foreseeable future. And then we will practice a passing of the peace, which is kind of a greeting time portion of the service, but it won't be anything like what we're used to seeing. It will all be done while seated in your household clusters. So as you can see, kind of from this basic list, we're really thinking through every aspect of our ministry with a new filter for health and safety. Certainly you have questions related to eKids. We are still working on all those details and aren't quite ready to share those yet, but hope to very soon. And in fact, if you have questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to kind of tell you the things that we're thinking about, but also know that we're still developing specifics for each area of ministry. And we will be sharing those once we have a more specific time frame of when we'll be gathering together again. So I wanted to take just a moment, and now it's 12 minutes of your time, to just update you on our approach and what that has looked like so far. Thank you so much for being with us during this season, for plugging into the ministry of Emmaus Road. We miss you, and we look forward to seeing you in person once we can again. But in the meantime, we look forward to you joining us on our broadcast on YouTube and Facebook at 10 a.m. Beginning this Sunday, May 24th. So thanks so much for listening. God bless.